Hello and welcome to Straight Talk. Well, much is happening in the meat industry in both the North and South Islands. In the North, Tallies is once again looking to increase its stake in AFCO, a company which has recently shown quite an improvement in its performance. And in the South, Silver Fern Farms is laying off more workers, blaming the rapidly reducing national sheep flock. What sort of shape is it in for the new season? Today I'm joined by meat industry commentator Allan Barber and interest.co.nz's Bernard Hickey. Well, Allan, what's behind the latest Tallies move?
I think it's quite simple. It's the minority shareholder, the second biggest shareholder, Takuya Nominees, which is the Spencer Family Trust, have decided that, having been in the AFCO shareholding register for probably ever since it came on board, ever since it was listed in 1994-95, they've decided they want to turn their shareholding into money because it's not going to make them any if they keep sitting on it with Tallies as a majority shareholder.
So have they been thinking about this for some time? Will it have come as a surprise to meat industry observers such as yourself?
No, I don't think so. It was just that when the subject was last raised with them, they said, no, we're still holders of the shares. We still want to be in there. But Tallies obviously said to them, look, we're a buyer. When you want to quit your shares, we're the only ones that are going to pick them up. And they're doing just that.
Right. Now, Bernard, AFCO is telling farmer shareholders to just hang on until the independent valuation comes through of their shares. What's that likely to show, do you think?
Well, 37 cents is slightly above where they've been trading in the last few weeks, months or so. But basically, AFCO's share price has been flat to dead for quite a few years. And that's one of the reasons why they might get a few takers at 37 cents a share. With the outlook for the meat industry relatively subdued. There's a lot of consolidation to come. A lot of people are worried about overcapacity, and AFCO hasn't really performed in a fantastic way in the last few years. They'll think, well, maybe time to get out. This is another blow for the NZX. It takes away one of the few avenues for investing in New Zealand's agricultural sector through the NZX if it does get taken out, and is bad news really for investors broadly. Although if you're a farmer and you're looking for a bit of extra cash,
it might just be the ticket, yeah. And also recently, AFCO have had a better than expected half-year result, haven't they, Allan?
I think they did very well. It was very much in line with last year. So the result for the full year is probably going to be about the same as last year. Won't show any significant changes because things are very competitive out there. But I think AFCO, when you look at it in comparison with Silver Fern Farms' result a month earlier, AFCO's done extremely well.
Right. Do you think the market is seeing that, Bernard? It's reflecting that sentiment in terms of the comparison of the North and South Island meat industry players?
Well, I think AFCO's share price has been very subdued over the last few years.
Well, they don't pay dividends, of course. Tallies make a decision not to pay it, so there's no incentive really to. That's
right, and that makes it difficult for investors to see much of an outlook, and that's no doubt why the Spencers have decided to get out. The Tallies want to take that back in-house, keep those cash flows, and get ready for the consolidation to come in the industry, and maybe a stronger player because of that. We'll see whether the independent report says that 37 cents is a good deal. I suspect quite a few shareholders will say, time to get out.
Yeah. With farmer shareholders, Allan, it doesn't bother them not receiving a dividend. Obviously it would be nice, but there hasn't been too much disquiet about that from them?
There hasn't been that much disquiet, but I don't think there'll be too much residual emotion or affection if they decide finally to get rid of the shares. I think they probably felt that it was quite a nice thing to have. It was certainly something that they were encouraged to buy when AFCO was in financial straits, listing back in the mid-90s. I suspect some of those farmers have been sitting on those shares ever since then. They were 50-cent shares. They've since been split to 25. So if they sell now, they're getting a roughly 50% gain premium on the listing value, but they haven't had any dividends for 15 years, or for 10 years anyway.
Which is not so great. Now, what about AFCO's plants in terms of how well they are set up, based on the fact that lamb numbers are looking pretty constant in the North Island, and there might even be some increases there?
The word from AFCO is that their plant configuration is pretty good. They're in the right places. They've got Morewa, Rangiuru and the Bay of Plenty. They've got Wairau on the east coast. They have Horatoun, Hamilton. They have Manawatu beef packers. They have Imlay. So they have those plants in the North Island spread very nicely through the island. They're all efficient. Tallies have spent money on, or made sure that AFCO has reinvested money in its plants. So they're now modern plants running well, and I think they're configured extremely well to cope with the likely livestock numbers that are to come. And it's worth bearing in mind that they only have one lamb plant in the South Island, which is where real sheep number reduction is happening. In the North Island, things are reasonably constant, but in the South Island they've got the dairy factory next door to the meat plant, which is well positioned to pick up cull cows down in Southland, and they've got a lamb plant in Malvern in Canterbury.
Right, okay. Now moving to the South Island, the Silver Fern Farms set up there in terms of what's happening with numbers of workers being cut at Belfast. This was a well-signalled move, was it, that something had to happen there?
The workforce, or the union, says that it's come as a big shock, but I don't think anybody looking at it in advance would have been totally surprised that Silver Fern Farms still had rationalisation to do. They've done pretty well at achieving rationalisation of what were some fairly old and certainly large plants which they didn't really need for the new livestock configurations in the South Island. It's been progressively, if they hadn't done anything, it would have become almost unsustainable, if not totally unsustainable. I think they've done pretty well at biting off chunks of restructuring as they've been able to do it. But still the question remains whether that's ultimately going to be enough soon enough.
Yes. Now, Bernard, how's the market looked on this move from Silver Fern Farms? Do they see the meat industry as one of just, reducing plants, reducing workers, inevitably following the decline in sheep numbers, particularly in the South Island?
Yeah, this is a story all about dairy's expansion. And we've seen with the MAF report out this week of an expected increase in production of 14% in the coming year, potential increases in payouts for dairy in the next couple of years as demand from China for all this protein, the strength of the free trade agreement, grows demand for dairy. If anything, the trend's going to get worse in the South Island in terms of more dairy output, less sheep and beef output, particularly in those grasslands of Southland and South Otago. That's going to make life more difficult for the meat processors overall. And this trend of slowly consolidating output is going to keep pressuring those plants. The question is, when is the meat industry going to get its act together? When is someone going to blink? When is the chicken going to fall, so to speak? Because they are playing a big game of chicken on who's going to be the one to shut down that output. And you'd have to wonder, a lot of farmers would wonder, surely there's going to have to be another look at this deal, the PPCS or Silver Fern Farms alliance deal that was put on ice a couple of years ago. Maybe over the next couple of years, as the pressure goes on, people will have to look at that again.
Yeah. Do you agree with that, Allan, or do you think there are forces there that are keeping the two big players away from getting around the table and really nutting this out?
I've got a bob each way on that. I agree with Bernard. Logic says it has to happen, and the fact that Craig Norgate didn't manage to buy 50% of Silver Fern Farms through PGG Wrightson means that there is no structural obstacle in place to making it happen. If Wrightson's had succeeded in paying for the 50% and it was now a completely different company, I'm not sure quite how the consolidation would have happened, because I'm sure Alliance would have been dragged kicking and screaming into a merger of any sort. Whereas now the potential is there for a rationalisation to occur at some point. Neither company would say that they want to do it because I think it is that question of the